lunged at me, and I started pulling the trigger, and he just kept coming. And I remember trying to move to get away from him, but he kept coming at me.
Ashley, would you tell us why, if you're holding a loaded firearm, you were attempting to move away?
I was trying to get away from him. I was terrified.
All right, so you're firing. He keeps advancing. What happens next?
It was like his feet slipped out from under him and his legs went up in the air.
When Doug hits the floor, what's your immediate reaction?
I ran to get help.
Now, our viewers are still talking about this pivotal moment in the Black Swan murder trial when Ashley Benefield took the stand in her own defense. Her defense attorney asked her about incidents of alleged abuse carried out by Doug, including hitting her in the head, and that happened on the day of the shooting. Before that, there wasn't much physical violence, punching their dog, and installing a tracking device that Ashley did not agree to. He put that on her car. Well, Doug Benefield died back in September of 2020 when Ashley shot and killed him. Now, she doesn't deny pulling that trigger, but claims it was done in self-defense, as you heard. Now, she faces life in prison if convicted of second-degree murder. So in today's Talkback segment, we're asking you, how believable was Ashley Benefield's testimony? Joining me to discuss, still, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor David Bruno, and civil and defense attorney Tad Thomas. I will say this, gentlemen, we did a poll on our website, and the numbers were not in favor, to say the least, of Ashley Benefield. 70%, she wasn't believable. 10%, a little bit believable. 9%, mostly believable, which is more than I would have thought, to be honest with you. All right, let's get to our first comment, though. It comes from Teresa. Teresa says Ashley was, quote unquote, so afraid of Doug that she invited him to help her move, not buying her story. And that seemed to be a theme there, Tad, the idea that her story didn't make sense. A lot of people weren't into so much that demonstration she did. There was just something about her that doesn't come across real, especially following up on her case with Marsha Thompson that we just had before this case, where you could tell the authenticity of her claims.
Yeah, but you know, what we see as viewers watching it on TV is very different than what the jury sees sitting in that courtroom. We've done a lot of focus groups on cases, and we've put witness after witness and client after client in front of the focus group, and it's amazing how many times I look at a witness and say, wow, that was terribly unbelievable, horrible witness, and then the focus group or the jury in many cases really believe them, and because they're sitting in the courtroom and they feel the power of that testimony. So while us viewers, me being one of them, are very skeptical of this testimony, those jurors sitting in that courtroom may feel very differently.
Well, there you go. Lesson learned. I mean, you just never know what a jury's going to do. That's the bottom line. Our next comment comes from Diana. Diana says, the system failed her time and time again. I believe her. And that's interesting. David, do you agree with that? I mean, again, we saw that there were a number of attempts by her. Matter of fact, one judge said that he didn't find anything that she said very credible. And there were some issues. The defense claims that this was a last resort, and he was continuing his pattern of control and dominance over her. Where do you stand?
Oh, wow. I think they did drop the ball on the violation of the protective order with that package that was sent over. You know, the defense tried to get that prosecutor on to give some context about an opinion that she had that was precluded by the court. So if the audience is talking about that particular occasion, I think possibly. But Michael, every time a defendant takes the stand, what it does, all focus on the defendant. Because as defense attorneys, we are constantly just holding the state to their burden of proof and cross-examining and trying to open up holes that we can make arguments that the prosecutor didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. But in these cases, as we've been seeing, when they're self-defense and there's a reasonable person standard, it forces the defendant to take the stand. And when they do, all eyes are on that and the credibility there. So that's what the defense is trying to do now, is to corroborate them. You saw that with the domestic violence experts, so to speak, about the cycle of domestic violence, to explain how there could have been those cordial text messages immediately before the shooting. And then also the expert that testified that the trajectory of the trajectory of the gunshot, as well as the possibility of the witness's legs going up to corroborate her testimony. Those are the efforts that the defense are making to try to corroborate her testimony.
Yeah, and I got to say, the defense is doing a wonderful job. Again, I don't know how effective it is in the eyes of the jury, but I think they're certainly shooting their shot. All right, our next comment comes from Mike. Mike says, I don't think she's a professional actor on the stand, but for him to install tracking devices on her vehicle shows that he was obsessed with her, capable of being jealous. I'm sure the age difference more than likely made him feel insecure. They need to show that she was in fear for her life. And that's absolutely true, Tad. It's about this anger versus fear. And I got to say this. When I think of him, we're putting a lot of emphasis on her. Obviously, she's the one on trial. She's the one that took the stand. But when you look at a man 30 years her senior, and some of the things that he was willing to put up with still kept coming back to her, on her, trying to follow her to another state, it raises questions for me as well about this victim as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's an obsession there, and you know, the expert is really good talking about how victims feel in these relationships, how they act in these relationships. So it certainly does open up the door to, you know, her truly feeling, you know, both ways about this relationship, attracted to him, yet at the same time terrified.
Absolutely. The two things can exist at the same time at the end of the day. Final comment, quick from Barb. Barb says, she is so phony. She's not even a little bit believable. If the jury doesn't see through her, they are all blind. Gentlemen, I mean, at the end of the day, as you said, Tad, you just don't know what juries are going to do, what they're seeing versus what we're seeing across the television. So we just don't know. But at the end of the day, Tad Thomas, David Bruno, thank you so much for being with me this evening.